the cities where we live. Much like graffiti is iconic to the social awareness of the cities, so super high-rise buildings can be iconic of our cities. But you know what? We as designers do not decide what is iconic. The public decide what is iconic. Ferraris are made in Italy, sushi comes from Japan, it could never come from Britain. And what we find in Europe is that city icons seem rarely to be the new super high-rise buildings. They're very powerful. Every city has a city icon. In America, the same is true. But once again, we find it's not the super high-rise buildings. They are older icons that are embedded in people's memories. And they seem to be things that have significantly memorable shapes. On the other hand, when we come to Asia Pacific, we find that modern buildings are iconic of the cities in which they're built. Maybe that's because the cities are relatively new in their urbanization and don't have memorable, large, iconic structures. I tested this theory by applying an internet search, an internet image search for London icons. And I did not come up with the 3 super high-rise buildings, I came up with Tower Bridge. I tested it again in New York, and once again I did not come up with a high-rise in Manhattan, but I came up with the Statue of Liberty. Simple search, New York icon. And in Shanghai, it was Oriental Pearl Tower that went out over the new towers in Pudong. As a general rule, it seems to be that Western cities have old icons, and Asian cities have modern icons. And some, in fact, very modern indeed, as at Marina Bay Sands. How successful that has been as an icon. 3 fingers and a hat, and everybody says Singapore. And Chongqing is soon to have 4 fingers and a hat, and therefore it must be a Singapore developer. Here are a few super high-rise that are being built or completed in China. And the building I just mentioned in Chongqing is on the right. If I switch them around, would we really notice? Were those buildings actually of the city that they were designed for, or could they be applicable to another city? To try to discover what that's all about, I've gone back to the start of architecture, 5,500 years ago, and quickly drifted through it until I found, well, in the ancient Egyptian architecture, very quickly at the start of architecture, identified the column and the beam. And from the column and the beam came all the rules of classical architecture. Through the Minoan civilization, the ancient Greeks, the Romans, but they added an arch to it, otherwise it's still column and beam. The Byzantine, Gothic and Romanesque architecture, the Renaissance reinventing classical architecture all over again, cooling it down in the 18th century, but still classical architecture, column and beam. And then dressing it up in the Beaux-Arts 19th century. And it isn't until the 20th century that we finally find some free form, that we've departed from column and beam. Because the West has spent 5,500 years playing with column and beam. And of course, high-rise challenged architects throughout the West. Because for the first time, we had an unidentifiable height that had to be broken down or dealt with in some way, shape or form. And on the left, the Flatiron building was the early attempt to classify or classicize a high-rise building, quickly surpassed by Art Deco and on into international style high-rise. From international style, the West diverged into rationalism, a belated attempt to bring back classical with postmodernism, and critical regionalism, which is an attempt to embed design within the city for which it's intended. And I'll come back to that later. In Europe, we had the rationalists, form follows function, and otherwise we had the formalists, where form follows form shape. Chinese traditional architecture has an equally long history, where all the formalist rules of architecture were developed over thousands and thousands of years. And the techniques and craftsmanship of making architecture were developed into a high style. But when we come to modern buildings, traditionalism cannot always be applied. It has been extremely successful in Jinmao, but we wouldn't want to see Jinmao towers all over China. In the meantime, China is building cities for 20 million people per annum. That's more than all the rest of the world combined. So China has the opportunity to lead the world in architectural design. What are the considerations for high-rise design in China? Not just functionality, but also design for humanity, respecting culture, sustainability, social behavior, and climate. And I'm now going to go through 3 projects by INES, which you could label as critical regionalism, but are an attempt to embed each of these towers into the city from whence it came from. And the first one is right outside the doors of this hotel. It's only a few hundred meters away. It's the Jifangbay's Inwell bookstore development in the heart of Jifangbai, next to the monuments. And our first step here was to identify the parameters, the characteristics of Chongqing. It's a compact city. It's very three-dimensional. Mountains, rivers, terraces. And where people live and work is extremely dense because land that can be built on is in short supply. For the development, we wanted to ally business-oriented developments with a culturally creative development that would invite people in Chongqing into this development to use it. As cities get ever more dense, they need more public space. There isn't sufficient public space on the streets anymore. So buildings are required to provide public space in the lower levels. High-rise towers need to become perforated as they approach the ground and provide public space. So here, in this bookstore project, the lower 5 levels are retail, followed by the 3 stories of the bookstore itself. Above that, 5 stories of retail, dining, entertainment, before we go into the office tower, which is capped by residential apartments. Here's the key section through the lower 14 levels of the building. 5 stories of retail, escalators rising up to a terrace at level 6, where the bookstore is located on 3 stories. Another set of escalators leads up to level 10 and on again to level 14, past the retail, dining, and entertainment. But how are we going to shape this building? This building is going to belong to Chongqing, belong to the people of Chongqing. Well, we thought of an ancient Chinese scroll. After all, it's a bookstore building. And the scroll would be wrapped around the terraces of Chongqing, a mountain city embracing books. Here we see the scroll wrapped around the lower terraces. And the lower terraces themselves invite people up from the street and create another public realm in the heart of Chongqing. And the bookstore is a golden box, holds the secrets of books. At night, the entire base of the tower is lit up. Next project is way to the south in Hengqin, which is the new city, new financial district of Zhuhai. And this is the tower on the nose of Hengqin Island, so it's a very, very significant position. Hengqin is one of the 4 dragons rising out of the Pearl River Delta. So what better metaphor to use than the flood dragon rising out of the sea, symbolizing growth and movement. And in the platform itself, the conference, exhibition and retail is a flowing dynamic form rising up into the tower. The program is similarly diverse. Retail, conference exhibition, office, and the top of the tower is residential, which gives us the reason to shape the tower to create the outside walls of the residential apartments to enjoy view. And here we see that shaping, that sinuous shaping of the dragon as it arises out of the sea mists of Hengqin. Next project is in Chongqing, the oldest city in China. And this is a Twin Crane Lake high-rise tower project. It's not a super high-rise, it's just over 220 meters tall. It's in a new district, Chongqing, rapidly expanding, on the Twin Crane Lake, on an east-west axis, which is extremely unusual to have an east-west axis. And on the left, the hotel, the right, the Central Apartment Building, conferencing centre, an extremely axial arrangement respecting the park. In search of meaning for this development, firstly, Zhengzhou is the foundation of Chinese civilization 5,000 years ago. It was the capital of China 3,500 years ago. And these 2 bronze pots were created 500 BC. It struck us that these pots could be the start of a metaphor for the building. The shape, the elegant shape inside of the pots, could start to define the towers themselves. But one metaphor is not enough. To truly embed these buildings in the culture of Zhengzhou, we needed more. In 1042 BC, the Duke Zhu created an observatory to measure the sun angle. And by measuring the sun angle, he could predict the winter for the farmers to know for their crops. And that observatory was repeated in 1276. It still exists. The slot between the towers and the ruler on the ground measures the sun angle. Luckily, we have an east-west direction for our axis. So our 2 towers can similarly measure the sun angle and memorialize the work of the Duke of Zhu, capturing the sunrise and the sunset. And as the sun passes exactly on the axis, the towers come alive with light. key to our life.